We're now joined by two key members of the House Intelligence Committee, Ranking Democrat Adam Schiff, Republican Peter King. And Congressman Schiff, let me begin with you. You've received briefings on this situation, and you said that the Saudi cover story is not credible. What more can you tell us about what you know?
Well, I got a detailed briefing from the intelligence community about what they know, what they can tell us at this point. And while I can't go into the substance of it, I can tell you I don't find this Saudi account credible at all. There's simply no way they dispatched a team this large and that Khashoggi engaged in some kind of a brawl with them unless he was merely fighting for his life. But I think we can see where this is headed. Ultimately, the president is going to accept the Crown Prince's denials. But it's hard for me to imagine that these orders would have been carried out without the knowledge of the Crown Prince. I think this ought to be a relationship-altering event for the U.S. and Saudi Arabia, that we ought to suspend military sales, we ought to suspend certain security assistance, and we ought to impose sanctions on any of those that were directly involved in this murder. This really ought to be something that causes us to do a re-examination of our relationship with Saudi Arabia.
You agree with that, Congressman King?
I believe that, first of all, the president should go all the way on this as far as this is a first step. That's all it is. It's really not a believable first step. The important thing is they're admitting that he was killed when he was in their custody. But there's no way that one person, basically an overweight civilian, has to be killed when he's facing up to 12 or 15 professionals. They could have brought him down in a matter of seconds without causing any physical harm at all. So obviously there was an intent, I believe, to kill him. That's number one. Number two, though, we do have a relationship with Saudi Arabia that we should try to maintain. Listen, during the Obama administration, I led the fight in the House to allow 9/11 families to sue Saudi Arabia. President Obama fought us every step of the way, and we had to override his veto. So all presidents want to maintain some sort of relationship. But where Adam and I think, can agree is that that relationship cannot allow savagery such as this. So I would ask the president to try to thread the needle here. One, two, whether it involves imposing sanctions, whether it involves delaying arms sales, making a clear statement of condemnation at the end, but still not hurt ourselves, because the Saudis do provide very effective intelligence. They are a bulwark against Iran, and they have been working closely with Israel. You put all that together, we have to try to balance it. The world is not that simple. But again, what happened here was savagery, and we can't go along with their cover story.
So Congressman Schiff, that gets to the question, if you're trying to balance this out, thread the needle, if the Crown Prince was indeed behind it, and by most accounts he is the real power behind the throne in Saudi Arabia right now, can the U.S. work with him?
Well, look, we're never going to know exactly what took place in terms of the Crown Prince's marching orders for this group unless we get a confession from the Crown Prince, which is not going to happen. The folks that were involved in this murder aren't going to be speaking out. So we're never going to have absolute certainty. It's for that reason I think that the president is going to accept the Crown Prince's denials, much as he's accepted Putin's denials and Kim's denials. So I think that's the reality. But nonetheless, we can, I think, deal very seriously with this and send a message to the Crown Prince that we're not going to tolerate the murder of journalists. We're not going to tolerate these extrajudicial and extraterritorial killings. And it will have a real consequence. I think part of why we are where we are is that we have essentially delivered a message through the Trump family that it's carte blanche for the Saudi family. They can do what they want, where they want, and the U.S. will never stand up to them. And that kind of a policy has got to come to an end.
Other Democrats, Congressman King, have said part of the reason for that is that the Trump organization, the Trump family, is actually profiting from their ties to the Saudis. Should the president release all information related to his financial ties to the Saudi kingdom?
Well, first of all, I think it's wrong to inject partisanship in this right now. Nobody was more supportive of the Saudis than President Obama. The large arms deals under President Obama. He fought us tooth and nail, attacked the Congress when we allowed 9/11 families to sue the Saudis. So he went out of his way to shield the Saudis. To be making these type of allegations against the president, listen, if you want to do it 3 or 4 months from now, do it. But the fact is, right now, the president is in a very delicate diplomatic spot, the same as President Obama was. And I think, at least for this, let's have a certain timeout when it comes comes to making the partisan shots. Let's deal with it on the merits. What Saudi Arabia did was savage. It was evil. That's to be condemned. We have to take action. But let's not be questioning the motives of our president right now. He should be the president of all the people at this moment. When the dust settles, then people can make the allegations they want. But again, I just go back to the heat that I took from the Obama administration when I was fighting for 9/11 families to sue the Saudis. And that's the only time during the Obama administration that Congress was able to override his veto. But that's how strongly he felt about shielding the Saudis.
George, if I could just add, I do think we need in the Intelligence Committee to do a deep dive, a probe in terms of Saudi Arabia, in terms of the Saudi efforts of the war in Yemen, the civilian casualties there, in terms of this murder. But we also ought to determine whether financial motives are motivating the president and the first family. This is the very problem with the president not releasing his tax returns. It leaves the American people wondering, is U.S.-Saudi policy being driven by something other than national interest? So I do think we ought to demand answers of the administration.
Congressman King, one way to get to the bottom of this would be if the Turkish government released those audio tapes they say they have of what happened inside the consulate. Should the United States demand to hear them?
I think, again, that would be behind the scenes. But yes, yeah, the U.S. should hear, I'm going to say the American people have to hear them now. No, our government, our intelligence agencies, I believe, should be given access to all of this. Believe me, let me make it clear. I think the Saudis are the most amoral government that we've ever had to deal with. I have no love for the Saudis. I would have to fight against them. And yes, I think whatever the Turkish government has, they should make available to us. And this could be maybe an opportunity for us to perhaps strengthen our relations with the Turks, which have gone bad in recent years. But yes, they have an opportunity now to show us what they have. It's important enough so this, this doesn't just become a fight between Erdogan and the Crown Prince. This is basically civilized nations coming together to find out what happened, condemn it, and do all we can to make sure it doesn't happen again, and also to maintain our standards, our beliefs in human rights.
Congressman Schiff, you agree with that?
I do agree with that. I think we should demand the audio recordings. I have to expect that Turkey is holding them in abeyance for now because they want to have this lever over the Crown Prince. There is obviously this regional rivalry between these two countries, and that's manifest in conflict in places like Syria and elsewhere. But we should demand access to those recordings. We should demand the publication of those recordings. And frankly, the Turkish explanation, if it is one that they don't want to betray their intelligence gathering methods, they've already acknowledged they have recordings. So it seems there will be little additional damage done to their methods by disclosing what those recordings have to say and allowing the United States and others to hear those recordings.
We will end on that note of agreement. Congressman, thank you both very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Adam.
Up next.